October 3rd, 1965. Responding to speculation that he had ordered Che's death, Fidel Castro reads a letter Che has written to him.
I feel that I have fulfilled the part of my duty that tied me to the Cuban Revolution and its territory. And I say goodbye to you, to the comrades, to your people, who are now mine. I formally resign my positions in the leadership of the party, my post as minister, my rank of commander, and my Cuban citizenship. Nothing legal binds me to Cuba.
Che had not expected the letter to be read publicly.
Y resulta que ya no lo era.
The day that Fidel read that letter is when we found out about it. It was a very difficult moment. He was neither the Cuban nor African leader.
Che himself was going through a very dark period. While there, he received the news that his mother had died. He was very close to his mother, and that was really hard on him.
He had turned into a withdrawn man. He didn't talk. He was always alone, sitting on a tree trunk. He was in a bad mood and he spoke very little with us.
By mid-October, government forces and mercenaries advance.
His camp was nearly overrun.
Rebel resistance collapsed. And at the same time, what you have is the decision of the government of Tanzania that they're no longer going to support this war.
Fidel urges Che to abandon the mission and bring his fighters home.
Their retreat from the Congo was ignominious. That's how he himself described it. They just barely escaped with their lives.
Admitting defeat, Che holds up at the embassy in Tanzania and then moves to a safe house in Prague.
Fidel sent couriers to him, urging him to reconsider and return. Che refused. He refused to go back to Cuba after having given his word that he would go off and, if necessary, die to lead other revolutions elsewhere. After some time, Fidel told Che that he had brokered a deal with the head of the Bolivian Communist Party for him to go to Bolivia.
He jumps at the chance. In Bolivia, Che's plan is to train a guerrilla force to start a liberation war that would spread all across the hemisphere.
What he hoped to do was to spark off enough guerrilla insurgencies around the world that would attract American firepower, distract it from Vietnam, and ultimately sap it of its strength, and to overturn the world order once and for all. He was trying to start World War III.
A war that will wipe out capitalism and install communism in its place.
If he was successful, he'd be able to change the world. I don't think Che ever really contemplated failure.
After the failed mission in the Congo and his farewell letter to Fidel Castro read publicly, Che Guevara refuses to return to Cuba without a success. His plans to expand the revolution bring him to Bolivia. November 1966. Che arrives in La Paz in a convincing disguise.
Che had all of his hair plucked out one by one, and an identity was created for him as a traveling salesman, a man in his mid-50s.
He makes his way to a base in Nancuazú, where he meets Loyola Guzman and other members of the Bolivian Communist Party.
Era militante de la Juventud Comunista de Bolivia.
The encounter with him was a surprise because of rumors that he was held prisoner in Cuba, that Fidel was going to kill him, that he was leading guerrillas in other countries.
Che explains the mission to the group.
He explained the objective, which was an armed struggle in many Latin American countries, to make one, two, many Vietnams.
But soon, Che changes the plans. Instead of using Bolivia as a base to start revolutions in other countries, Bolivia will be used as the starting point for the revolution, which he himself will lead.
The party secretary general at that time, Mr. Monge, went into the camp and spoke with Che Guevara. And he told him that the only chance they could have was if the Bolivian Communist Party, Moscow line, would take the lead of this movement.
Che refuses to give up his position of leadership.
The party has taken up arms against us, and I do not know where this will lead, but it will not stop us.
But the loss of support from Monge's group leaves Che with only 24 soldiers. They include some of his old Cuban comrades. By the time they arrive in Bolivia, Che's disguise is well grown out.
When we arrived, there was none of what Fidel had promised was there. There was no food, ammo, medicine, or anything.
To make matters even worse, the peasant support the movement had so relied on in Cuba is nowhere to be found in Bolivia.
We had a land reform in 1952, so every peasant was the owner of his own piece of land. We had a democratic government, and we had free press.
The Chaco region of Bolivia, where Che has chosen to begin his campaign, is also unwelcoming.
There was no vegetation, no animals. There were no farmers.
Yet Che continues with his plans. If he could succeed in Cuba, he could do the same in Bolivia. March 19, 1967. Che and his men are joined by a few old acquaintances. They include French Marxist Regis Debray and two longtime supporters of the revolution, artist Ciro Bustos, and a former East German spy and suspected KGB operative named Tanya. Firmly committed to the communist cause, Tanya is the only link between the guerrillas and the outside world.
Tanya was the one who searched for everything before starting battle, from clothes, shoes, food, ammo, and everything. She quickly mobilized and got everything. She reached the highest levels of the Bolivian government.
But on one trip to the jungles, her cover is blown. Tanya is forced to stay with the guerrillas, but for some the conditions are too difficult.
The first informations came from deserters, but that confirmed the information about foreigners in the region, armed and with the intentions of creating a guerrilla force.
The army sends a patrol of 40 men into the area.
And that patrol was ambushed by the guerrillas. And on the 10th of April, we had another two ambushes. Two patrols were ambushed again by the guerrillas.
Che decides to split the group in two. A rebel leader named Joaquin will take the rear guard, while Che joins the vanguard. He instructs Regis Debray and Ciro Bustos to try to get a message out to Fidel Castro. In their attempt to do so, they're captured and taken prisoner by Bolivian armed forces. Sergeant Miguel Arroyo interrogates them.
Bustos practically spoke voluntarily because he was very worried. We gave him food and he talked. Bustos drew images of the Cuban guerrillas without naming them. And that's when they were able to see Guevara's profile, with the beard and his pipe.
Regis Debray confirms Che's identity.
When he resurfaced in Bolivia in 1967, you see the CIA intelligence reports saying, well, I guess we were wrong in thinking that he might have been dead these last several years, because it appears that he's alive and well and promoting revolution in the jungles of Bolivia.
The CIA sends a couple of agents to Bolivia in June 1967. One of them is Felix Rodriguez, the man who at age 18 had trained for the Bay of Pigs and had volunteered to assassinate Fidel Castro and Che.
The Bolivian government was sure that he was trying to promote the guerrilla in the area.
With evidence of Che trying to start a guerrilla war in his country, Bolivian President Barrientos starts a propaganda campaign against them.
They would say that if we went out, we would be mugged and raped by guerrilla fighters. That's what would be rumored.
With Che Guevara back on the radar, America begins to gear up to help the Bolivians.
It is absolutely clear that the CIA made this #1 priority in the summer of 1967. Lyndon Johnson was monitoring day by day the progress that was being made and tracking down and eliminating the great revolutionary Che Guevara.
A legacy of Kennedy's presidency is the creation of an elite counterinsurgency group known as the Green Berets. They're deployed to Bolivia.
The mission was to